Hello there. Welcome to my weekly meditation. And know that no matter who you are or where you are in your life journey, you are welcome in this place. This is a weekly video that I do for my congregation in South Burlington. And so if you are looking to nurture a progressive faith and you find this video helpful, please feel free to like, subscribe, or share these videos with anyone you feel called to. Hello, happy 4th of July, and I hope this gives you something to meditate on as you enjoy the holiday. A reading from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 11, verses 16 through 19 and 25 through 30. But to what will I compare this generation, says Jesus to his disciples. It is like children sitting in the marketplace and calling to one another. We played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We wailed, and you did not mourn. For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say, he is a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, look, a glutton and a drunkard, and a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. At that time Jesus said, I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and the intelligent, and have revealed them to infants. Yes, Father, for such was your gracious will. All things have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Come to me all, you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So today, I want to examine this passage from Matthew 11, and this, in a lot of ways, is about the offensive God. The God that speaks to us through things that we dismiss, things that get on our nerves, things that we don't want to deal with or just generally make us angry. And as a result, I think that that offensive way in which God sometimes speaks to us makes it so we're not really able to see the call of love that God intends through it. This passage in particular speaks to that, I feel, by centering on two figures, and that's John the Baptist and Jesus. The chapter, or at least this passage, is Jesus talking to his disciples after he's had a conversation with the followers of John the Baptist. And they ask him, are you the Messiah? And he says, yes, and here's why. And then he later talks to his disciples, more to the point, about the reasons why people dismiss him and John the Baptist. In the case of John the Baptist lived this really austere life. He was going around in this beat-up, raggedy clothes, and he would eat honeyed locusts and baptize people in the river like a crazy person. And people used that as an excuse not to listen to the message that he had about cleaning up a society that was unequal when it came to wealth, that was unjust when it came to exercising power, and really did overlook the needs of everyday people who were suffering. Jesus had a very similar message, and I think this is the reason why John's disciples came to him. Jesus shared in a lot of ways that he also was overlooked by mainstream Jewish society at the time for different reasons. You know, he spoke the language of the people of Israel of his time, but he did things that they found offensive, other things that they found offensive. He would eat with sex workers, he would eat with tax collectors, he would visit people who had leprosy, and these are folks that people were convinced were sinners. And so they didn't listen to him because of the people that Jesus chose to associate with. And Jesus tells his disciples, well, look, these folks are going to look for any excuse not to listen to the call of love that I'm trying to put forward into the world. But if you have any doubts as to whether or not this is the call of God, take a step back and try to look at the world through the eyes of a child. Try to look at the world free from the prejudices, free from the assumptions, free from the conventional knowledge and wisdom that society often puts on you. Look at the good that we are doing for people who are sick. Look at how we're giving support to people who are homeless. Look at how we're giving community to people who have been denied community, such as tax collectors and sex workers, and how that can really enrich lives and bring people closer to God. If you doubt that this is God's will, then look at the love that you can tangibly see being brought into the world. Jesus says, sometimes it is a blessing to not be overburdened with intelligence and wisdom, because intelligence and wisdom, as we know it conventionally, have blind spots. Sometimes it's good for us to be able to look at the world with our hearts and to just understand love for love's sake. So this last week, the Supreme Court upheld a ruling. A woman who had a web design business didn't want to service people who are LGBTQ plus as clients because it was against her religious beliefs, and the Supreme Court said that she had a First Amendment right to do that. I think that is a real hang-up for our society. I think it's also a hang-up for us within the faith communities of this country, because it basically says that we do not need to challenge ourselves to engage with people or participate in the lives of people who we are convinced for some reason are sinners or different than us. And I think that that really is adversarial to what it is Jesus did in his ministry and what Jesus is trying to say in this passage from Matthew 11. Jesus is basically saying that the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the Herodians, the people who are in power in Israel, they are embracing a type of wisdom that is flawed. They are convinced that they know everything that there is about what sin is and who are sinners, and therefore they don't have to listen to what Jesus says because he's obviously wrong based off of their conventional understanding. And this is where Jesus says, take a step back, unravel that understanding, the mind control that society indoctrinates us into, and just look with your eyes, look with your heart. Look at how we are bringing community and fellowship and love to people who have been cast out of society and have been denied that fellowship, that love, and that community. Look at how it makes the world a better place. Look at these people who are suffering and have not been receiving any support from our society. Look at how we, as people of faith, are able to go into their lives and to give them a little bit of something to hold on to. Look at the blind man who was left on the side of the road. Even his own parents have denounced him because somewhere along the lines within his lineage, even though he didn't have anything to do with being born blind, somebody must have sinned somewhere, and therefore he is responsible for his own suffering. The person that kicks that blind man on the side of the road in Jesus' time would have been wise and intelligent for recognizing that person's sin. But Jesus says that's ridiculous. If you unravel the systems or the mind controlling or the brainwashing that tells people that that's okay and just look at the situation, why are you kicking a blind man? That's messed up. And that heart language, that wisdom of love, is what Jesus is telling his disciples to tap into. If you're willing to look at the world free of that conventional wisdom, if you're willing to try to seek out the wisdom of God, even if it makes you uncomfortable, even if it means that you're going to have to engage with certain things that make you angry, then you're more likely to find what God has to actually say to us. And it might just change the world to be a bit of a better place. I think that in a lot of ways, the LGBTQ plus community is being targeted by the religious community here in our country in a similar way which the Samaritans were in Jesus' day and age. A lot of the tropes that are being used against our LGBTQ plus brothers and sisters were used against the Samaritans as well. Look, they are born out of sin. Look, they are corrupting our children. Look, they engage in immoral trade practices. You know, these things were all thrown at the Samaritans because they just happened to be a people who were not quite Jewish enough in people's opinion. And Jesus made a very convincing case that love exists in them just as much as it does any other person. And how do we remember Samaritans today? The Good Samaritan. I think that that ability to step back and to look objectively at love in the world is a power that we within the church need to be equipping people with, as opposed to exploiting the systems of control and injustice and suppression that very often society uses to force us to get in line. I think that what Jesus is trying to say here is that love really is the important thing that our faith needs to be bringing out into the world. If you're using your faith to promote awfulness, then there are some tells that we need to be looking out for. And that honestly is, are you being awful? Because society and conventional wisdom have a bad habit to twist us to a point where good people are convinced that they need to be awful, or it condones awful people in their awfulness. We should be trying to bring out love within the world. And I think that for those of us within the church who are willing to recognize that people who are LGBTQ+ have a place within our congregations, within our lives, that when we share God's love with them, they in turn are able to lift us up and share that love back. And that really, whether you are in a relationship with another man or another woman, that has the ability to be just as blessed as a heterosexual relationship. A large part of the reason why people are against that is because we've been told to be against that. Not because we're willing to step back and just look objectively at what those relationships bring to our lives into the world. Jesus is telling us to recognize that the world of God's love is much more expansive than we often give it credit for. That those of us who are absolutely certain that we have the answer are more likely to be missing the point than those of us who are willing to say, I don't have all the answers. I don't know exactly what God wants for us. There's a lot more room for us to grow. Because within that space of growth is possibility. Within that uncertainty about where the world will take us also can be hope. That no matter how messed up things are in the world today, if we're willing to just listen, observe, and try to help our neighbors out of love, eventually we can make this world a much better, just, equitable, and loving